Welcome to Vintage Gaming Memories. Shall we play a game?
Only Atari.
Have you played Atari today?
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I appreciate all of you for checking out this video, so let's just jump right into it. Now I've done some videos in the past of my Atari related magazine collection. For example, I have all the antique magazines that they published and almost all of the analog ones. In one of my earlier videos on the channel, I did discuss in detail the progression of the antique magazines. Now there's a link to it in this video's description as well as on the top here if you want to check it out. It's pretty interesting to see how those magazines progressed during its time. I also dedicated a small area in my game room to display these magazines in this really nice commercial grade magazine rack. In the pockets I have other paperback media like the Atari Connection, Atari Explorer, APX, Atari Age, and Atari Addict, which I also did a video on that one, so be sure to check it out if you get a chance. But what I'm missing from all these Atari-related magazines is a really exciting, hard to find, and expensive if you do find it, but overall sad collection of magazines, and I'll explain that shortly. It's called the Atarian Video Game Magazine. This was Atari's official magazine that was focused on the games for the Atari consoles like the 2600, the 7800, and the XEGS. The first issue came out as the May-June 1989 issue, which is this one right here, and the last issue came out as the October 1989 issue. That's right, do the math, 4 months after that first issue. So only 3 issues were ever published. The premiere one from May-June 1989, the August 1989 issue, which was the second one, and then the last one from October 1989. So, what went wrong? Well, I could say that I didn't help the cause. I do owe a lot to Atari because I know I wouldn't have the career I have if I never got that Atari 800 for Christmas in 1982. But with that said, in 1989, I graduated high school and already sold my entire Atari systems as I was focused on my social life. So what went wrong with these magazines could be attributed to a few things. One, people like me grew out of Atari as we entered adulthood, so the demand and sales were not there. 2, the content wasn't compelling enough to entice a growing audience. And 3, there was just ample competition out there already, especially when you consider Nintendo's NES was the king in the home console market. In 1989, NES had their 6th year in a row as being crowned as the best-selling home system. And let's not forget that around 19 million units of Super Mario Bros. Sold in 1989.
Mamma mia.
Basically, the Atarian Video Game Magazine just came out too late. But thankfully I was able to find these 3, and not at a cheap price. But we'll take a look at each one of these and see what you get for your $1.95 cover price purchase. All right, let's check out this first issue a little bit on the outside and just examine the condition. There's no mailing labels on there. There's no rips or tears, at least on the cover. The staples are intact, which is great. And the back looks decent as well. Now, I'll have to say right away, I can tell you, the weight of this is very light. I mean, look at that. I don't know. It's paper thin. So how many pages are really in this issue? We'll go here to the back. 24 pages. Really 25 if you count the back cover. And that's both sides a page. So really, if you divide that in half, you're looking at about 13 physical pages that you have to turn. That is pretty thin, I have to say. Well, anyhow, let's look at the nice artwork they have on the front. It does look pretty cool. It looks like a comic book, sort of, because of the illustration of the character, the superhero they have. I do like he has a Atari light pistol holstered on his waist, and he's holding various consoles there, gaming consoles for Atari. And then he has to say this little caption here, "Follow me, Atarians, our adventure has just begun." Little did we all know that this adventure would end shortly. But really, though, the cover is cool. It does give you some good info right off the bat here. You can see that it has reviews of various games in there. You've got first looks at other games and a cool interview of the founder of Atari, Nolan Bushnell. So they're halfway with me buying it at this point, even though it does feel a little bit light. Let's go and check what's on the inside. Well, you can see here that it is published on a bi-monthly basis, so there's going to be 6 issues in a year. And it states here that you can get the 6 issues or the 1-year subscription at $12, or save $3 by subscribing for 3 years, and you'll get 18 issues for $33 versus paying $36. Now, I found this pretty interesting. They have actual letters to read in their mailbag in their first issue, so they probably solicit people to mail in questions or comments prior to the first issue going out. This was a pretty interesting letter that came into the magazine. This particular reader wrote a letter stating how he believes Atari beats Nintendo, which I mentioned the complete opposite earlier by saying that Nintendo was dominating the home gaming console market, and that was probably one of the reasons why this magazine failed. But hey, that was his opinion, and I guess I probably would have said the same if I still had my Atari back then. And over here we've got a bunch of games, looks like was being ranked from various systems. We got the 2600, 7800, and the XEGS. And I believe this was taken in from readers who mailed in their top 5, and then they came up with a list with the top 10. I'm curious how many actually mailed this in to get this list. They didn't mention how many they received, but apparently enough to get at least a top 10 for each of those various gaming consoles. Then we got a bunch of previews of games here. There's the interview with Nolan Bushnell, and looks like it's about a page and a half. And then we jump into reviews of games. Quite a few reviews. This is pretty interesting. It's got a contest on the bottom here. Looks like they need some suggestions on naming that superhero that we saw on the front cover. And they came up with, as far as the Atarian magazine folks, they came up with Atari Ace or Commander Atari, but they want the readers to have a chance to name him. And I guess if you actually come up with the name that they'll use, you'll get $25 plus the cartridge of your choice. And then 5 runner-ups will get $5 each. That's kind of nice. So we have strategy now. More strategy. Get some good gaming strategy, I guess, if you're playing those particular games. And then we have some tips and tricks. And I guess these came in from other readers of, or other Atarians, I guess, because you could see they're people from around the country. You get some advertisement on the side. Then a little comic strip here, The Adventures of Atari. Some puzzles to solve. And that's about it. So for $1.95, yeah, I'll bite. I would pay for that. But speaking about cost, now I had mentioned what I had to pay for all 3, and it didn't quite adjust for inflation from 1989 with the $1.95 cost back then. I actually paid a premium to get all 3 of these because of the rarity and because of the condition that it's still in. I was able to negotiate all 3 of these down to $80, so not too bad, a little bit over $25 each. So that is the first issue, the premiere issue of Atarian Video Game Magazine. And we'll just take a look at the other 2. We won't go in too much detail, but I'm pretty sure we can go through them pretty quickly, being that they're not very thick. Like I said, that first one only had 25 pages. So here is the second issue. Again, more artwork for the cover page. This condition on this one is really good. Let's just jump to see how many pages we're looking at. Well, we're at 32 pages. So we have increased about a few more, 7 pages to be exact. So here we go. Let's look at this one. This one has the same kind of layout. On the front cover, you have details of games that will be reviewed within, some sneak peeks of other games, and I'm sure there's going to be, well, no interviews noted here, but we'll see. We got comics, top 30 again, tips and tricks, and more. I guess you get some information from pros telling you how to beat the games. Thunder Fox, and Double Dunk. Let's jump in and see what we have. The layout, like I said, is going to be the same. We're just talking about the second issue. They're not going to do many changes yet. You have the mailbag, top 30 games once again. Looks like Mario Brothers is the top one for all three. Some Nintendo love. Well, we do have some interviews here. We got Gary Kitchen. That's pretty cool. And we have information here about naming that superhero. Some more names came out of it. Super Atari, the Atari Avenger, the Amazing Atarian, A-Tar, Safari Atari. A lot of interesting names. So the contest still continues at this point. Reviews of some games. I mean, it's not bad. If you really want to get some information quickly and not have to read a book, you can get it from here. It's just short and sweet to the point. I'm not sure if some of that information you're going to be getting is something new. You might have already known about it, but it's definitely laid out nicely. And we got some previews, tips and tricks again. And again, these are from people writing in. And then we have some games checklist here. What is this? I guess you can go ahead and use this as a checklist for your wishes that you want for your birthday or Christmas and just indicate it to your parents. Get me these games. And again, Adventures of Atari and some puzzles at the back. So that is issue number 2 of the Atarian video game magazine. Well, here is the third and final issue of the Atarian video game magazine. And actually, I'm not expecting much of a difference in layout or the content from the last issue or even the first issue. But let's first check out the number of pages because that's always intriguing to me. Feels light. It looks thin. And we have 32 pages, 33, 34 if you want to count the back page. So it's the exact same number of pages as that last issue. So let's check out the cover art. Okay, right away I noticed something. Top left, win an Atari 7800 game system. Now, is that a call for desperation to get more sales? The reviews, strategy, and classic games that are being listed here, they're not bad. They're pretty good. They're intriguing enough for me to open up this magazine and maybe take it home. And like I've said before, I really do like this layout of everything on the front cover page. It's consistent, and it really does give the customer an idea of what you're buying without having to open it up and thumb through everything. All right, let's check out the pages inside. Top 30. Well, this has changed a little bit from the last issue. It looks like the top spot still remains for Mario Brothers for the Atari 2600, but the 7800 and the XE now have XEGS and Hardball, which hold number 1 spot. Those are pretty cool games that I do recall. Now, one thing I noticed is that they call the XE game system just XE, and I think the last 2 issues it was XEGS. Well, these are nice photos here of Atari back in 1989 at the CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show, and it was hosted in my hometown, Chicago. And right over here are the details on how you can actually win the Atari 7800 system. Well, let's take a close look at that. So you have to answer 10 questions correctly and be the first to get them mailed in. Because remember, there's no internet. You're not going to be submitting it via email. And just looking at these 10 questions for the first time, I can tell you that I probably know 3 of them for sure. But can you imagine doing the research back in 1989 without the internet? Now, if any of you know the answers to one or maybe all of the questions, please comment down below and share it with us. You know what? I'm going to start with the number 1 question. What's the name of Mario's brother? I'm going to go with Luigi on that one.
Oh, hey!
Now, let's continue to go through and look. We are now in the reviews section here. A lot of reviews again. Dark Chambers. I remember this game. And there's a lot of hints that they're giving you right here in these diagrams. That's great. More strategy. Oh, I like this. A little trip down memory lane. The Great Autumn of 1979. So this was 10 years prior to this issue being published. And let's take a look here. Wow, there's a few interesting things from 1979 listed here that we can sort of relate to today. For example, a dozen eggs cost 80 cents back in 1979. And as of May 15th, 2025, the average cost of a dozen eggs nationwide is around $5. But it is trending down. Oh, the average child spends 57 hours per week in front of the tube. Well, I think we could probably just change tube to phone or tablet to reflect 2025. And I could say that because I have a 12-year-old. And oh, this one here, definitely relatable. Or at least we can kind of tie some relation to it. This is Pope John Paul II. He became the first pope to be received at the White House. And a couple weeks ago, we had the first American pope from my hometown, Chicago, Pope Leo XIV. So that's pretty cool. Got some previews on this page. The tips and tricks. Giving some love to the classics, Donkey Kong and Millipede. And we have that games checklist. Another Adventures of Atari. And it looks like we're going to close this magazine out with some puzzles, just like the other two issues. And you know what? I'm just looking here, and I did check out this address just a second ago because I was wondering, is this the actual residential address or is this a business address? Because the street name is Hilltop Road in New Jersey. So I did a Google Earth, and I was surprised to see that it does look like a single-family home, but today it's owned by the company Endava. So I was wondering, if back in 1989 this was really a residential home with a family living in there, and maybe the Atarian puzzles editor was living there just getting mail in his mailbox of people submitting other ideas of video game related puzzles. You never know. I'm happy with this collection because it is rare and unique, but mostly because you only need 3 to complete it, and I like that. You might find one or maybe all 3 of these online to purchase, whether it's on eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or wherever you might find a magazine that's vintage or Atari related. But be sure to closely examine them like I just did on this video, because you can see the temptation for someone to write onto the pages like that games checklist section or even those puzzles. Now, you can't blame those original owners because how would they have known that these might be of value 35 plus years later? Well, next for me would be to put each one of these inside of this magazine protective sleeve and then have it on my magazine rack. And that would be it for this collection. And actually, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you all for watching. And please be sure to subscribe to help me grow this channel. And remember, keep your gaming passion from the past alive by living it today. Take care, everyone.